This is a Jmix exclusive.
You from Cal? Hey, Third, listen, Yeezy, you ever hear any half dead before Battle for Compton? Yeah, Tupac 187 came out 2 years before Battle for Compton. So maybe you should walk that back a little bit. Okay? Yeah. Tupac 187 came out, and before Tupac 187 came out in 2014, the confession letter was dropped by Greg Kading in 2013. So Little Half Dead came out in 2013. That's 4 years ago. Battle for Compton came out in 2017. So let's be clear about what we're asking here. Okay. Hey, by the way, Dion Williams, welcome to the show. It says Corey Edwards said that they waited at 662 for hours. Did you get that distinction? I don't remember him saying how long they waited at Club 662. Did he really say they waited there for hours?
I don't recall him saying that.
No, I don't recall him saying that either, but I would really like for him to say that, because if he did, it kind of blows their entire timeline out of the water in terms of what things are getting around. But again, the one last thing about the Little Half Dead and the Patton's theory coming out before Battle for Compton, it never came out because that's what you do when you're involved with the murder of somebody. You keep quiet. You don't say anything about it. Reggie Wright Jr. wasn't even known in the public until 2006, 2005 timeframe. Nobody, unless you were really deep in the woods, even knew who Reggie Wright Jr. was, much less that. And I'll give you a great example, because Frank Alexander didn't even understand the relationship between Tupac and Reggie Wright. I'm sorry, between Suge Knight and Reggie Wright, until we sat down and walked it through before Tupac assassination the documentary was ever done. It took us better part of a year to walk through all the documents, all the bankruptcy filings, everything that led up to explaining what a relationship Suge Knight had with Reggie Wright. Reggie Wright was nobody. You didn't even know that name, especially unless it was like Randall Sullivan Labyrinth, and that was kind of a niche book. It wasn't a big name. Broomfield brought it out in 2002, and that kind of came and went.
You couldn't even get a picture of him on the internet.
Yeah, I had to pay money to license a picture of Reggie Wright. I mean, that's the point. You be quiet, and you don't, and third, I mean, I'll even go far enough with you on that. Reggie kept quiet for a reason, because of his involvement. Now, once it started getting out and the light was shined on it, yeah, but before that time, nobody associated Reggie with being involved with the case. Okay? So, you don't know what you don't know. Okay? We don't know. Little Half Dead and his involvement with it, or Snoop, or his involvement, or anybody's involvement with it, isn't going to be known until somebody steps forward and says that they are. Okay? That's not something you broadcast. You don't get on the radio and say, hey, by the way, I just want to let you know 20 years ago I helped whack this dude. Okay? I mean, that's why. I mean, this whole thing with Orlando Essien took so much time, because if you've got people like Tim Brennan around there saying, believe what I tell you or else, or you got Reggie Wright out there who's involved with it, and these people are actually promoting a theory that doesn't involve them, okay? It's not going to be, hey, I've got time, let me tell you about this other theory about these guys, the Pattons and that. I mean, you tell me, why was Danny Patton's name on Tim Brennan's affidavit for the search warrant, and his house to be searched deleted from the search warrant as a house not to be searched? Why was Danny Patton's house not searched along with the rest of them? Okay? You explain that to me. Why was Danny Patton's name brought out of a confession letter by two guys that had absolutely nothing to do with it? What, did they just pull Danny Patton's name out of his ass? Did Robert Soria just pull Danny Patton's name out of his ass? And it just happened to be the same Danny Patton that was mentioned in Tim Brennan's affidavit? I mean, God damn it, go play the lottery. You got better odds. You got better odds that Tim Brennan mentions Danny Patton's name in an affidavit for a search warrant about the murder of Tupac Shakur, doesn't show up in the search warrant itself, but is under there in the facts, and a confession letter gets handed to Chris Blatchford by some paranoid schizophrenic guy, as Kading likes to put out, happens to drop the name of Danny Patton, who's also a known gangbanger in there. How the f*** is that not a coincidence? That's a coincidence? God damn it, check your odds.
And
okay?
WS62B said everybody wants to talk about Half Dead, but not about the Pattons. And this is what I've been saying. That was the point of them leading. leaking the letter was
Yes,
when they
that's the
put that
misdirection.
information out, they got to paint it the way they wanted to. So what they
Right.
did is they said, look at this ridiculous half-dead theory, and they
Yeah, about Brenda's
misdirected
got a baby.
everybody from the Pattons.
Disregarding every single other salient point that's in that confession letter. And I'm going to call it out. I'm going to call it out that many of you, even on this show, want to keep bringing up little half dead, and you want to dismiss the whole confession letter because of that. Go ahead and dismiss everything else that's in the confession letter, but you can't. And you're ignoring everything else in the confession letter because you're being blinded by the shiny metal object, which is the allegation about Brenda's got a baby and little half dead. Okay, does one part of that, even if it's not true, does one part of that make the rest of the letter invalid? And by the way, again, you've still got to explain to me how Robert Soria, who knew Danny and Malcolm Patton personally, his sister wrote a letter for the Pattons that indicated little half dead and was still able to talk about half dead being booted off to death row onto Priority Records. How would the Pattons know that? How would Robert Soria know that? And by the way, how would the confession letter happen to mention the name of, or mention Danny Patton, or be written by Danny Patton? And Danny Patton's the same description as the driver in Yafufula's statement. How are those coincidences?
That's called chain of evidence, and we're documenting it. And when I post that segment up, you will have already seen the Brennan affidavit. You would have already seen the confession letter, and there is a common theme. And when you see the report from Gaddafi describing the driver, and you look at a picture of Danny Patton, you know, those three things, like RJ said, play the lottery, because that's the trifecta of lottery. That is like lightning striking the same place 50 times.
Yeah. I mean, Danny Patton dictates a letter. Robert Soria, of course, knows. Robert Soria, the paranoid schizophrenic, knows that Tim Brennan put Danny Patton's name in the affidavit for the search warrant, right? And identified him with Loiters Park, and identified him with the search warrant based on what he believed was the murder of Tupac Shakur. Okay? Really? Come on. Anyway, yeah, you know what? Mike's right. We don't have to keep repeating ourselves day after day after day. People are going to believe what they want to believe. We encourage you to look at the facts. We encourage you to believe that. Don't get hung up on one of those things. You called Soria's father an honest man, since he said that. Well, first off, I've never met Robert Soria's father. Robert Soria's father was dying of cancer when they did that telephone interview, when Anton Beatty did that telephone interview with him. So I don't know, and I can't say that Robert Soria. I say Robert Soria is an honest dude. Robert Soria's father, I don't know Robert Soria's father from Adam, so I'm not really sure exactly where that comes from. That didn't. And by the way, Robert Soria's dad, if you go back and listen to that interview with Anton Beatty, Robert Soria's dad never said he was a paranoid schizophrenic. Get it right. They put words in his mouth and he said, yeah, I think so. Okay? Big difference. Get your facts straight. You want to come to the game, you want to come to RJ's plate, you want to talk it out. Get your facts straight first. Get it right first. When you step into the ring, make sure you got your gloves on, man. Let's see. Yeezy, in my occupation, I know for a fact drugs are being pushed through Palmdale, Lancaster, where all the old school gang members of LA have relocated. It's a new Compton. The Pattons live there. You are 100% right. I actually used to live in Palmdale and Lancaster in the 80s, and I watched it migrate into that. I watched the people from downtown LA, from East LA, come into Palmdale. I watched it go that route. He is 100% absolutely correct. You know, yeah, it's 1990s LA scary. It is. I've heard it's really bad out there. It's really bad. Let's see here. Well, as you could tell by my, oh, well, here we go. All right. So how are you guys saying Robert Soria is worth for anything? This punk wanted leverage, so he made his stepsister pen the bogus false letter. Says who? You don't even know the sister that he's talking about. If you're believing the stuff that Greg Kading put out, Machiavelli Outlaw, if you believe that Greg Kading shoveling about Valerie being the sister that he made do it, no. That's not true at all. It's Soria. It's a different sister. They got their facts wrong yet again. So do you. Once again, bring your facts to the table. Get your story right. You're going to come to the table here.
You blew them the out with the body language video. They got blown the out. I don't even understand why it's still a talking point.
Yeah. Just, So anyway, let's ask one more question because my voice, as you can tell, guys, my voice is shot. So let's see here. RJ and Jmix, the Gaddafi identified Danny Patton, and the confession letter identified the Pattons and Lil Halfdead as a suspect. Has this been ignored all these years? Was it a cover-up or no? Welcome to the show. I'll address this. I think it's going to be the last question here for me anyway, Jess. Here's the thing. The confession letter stayed in the hands of Chris Blatchford from 1998 until 2013 when he gave it to Russell Poole and myself. I gave copies of it. That letter never went anyplace else. According to Greg Kading, Vegas and da-da-da. Chris Blatchford called Vegas police. They didn't even want to hear about it. So at the end of the day, Chris Blatchford kept it. That was as far as it went. It stayed that way. So it wasn't like this information had been around. Okay? This information was kept quiet until 2013. And Russell Poole and I took that information to the Los Angeles Police Department because what do you do with information about a murder? You go to the police. You take it to the police because they're the ones that have the capability of fully investigating it and doing the right thing. And you want to preserve that chain of evidence because if they can get something, LAPD actually did their jobs and actually went out and investigated it, maybe they'd have the drop on these guys. Maybe they'd know something or get them to say something. But we did that, and we got burned when they leaked the confession letter and allowed them all to circle their wagon. So it doesn't matter how good of a theory you could have. You could have it all figured out, have everything plugged in and figured out. And it's not going to matter because those guys are going to make sure it doesn't get heard. Because if it does go back to the LA City of Los Angeles, or it does go back to some liability on some officer's part or something having to do with the bigger picture, there's people that have deep pockets and people that could be sued and people who could be damaged. So, they want to keep it away from there by blame the dead guy. So in terms of the in terms of your question, no, that's the problem. It hasn't been covered up. But each day that goes by, as we learn more, when the confession letter first came out and Russ and I first got the confession letter, we didn't even think about the Yafufula statement to the police. We didn't even think about that. That came like years later that we tied that one in. So, I mean, it's an evolutionary process. You don't think of everything right at the top, but you tend to get enough and you tend to build information that links everything together. These pieces start to come together. They start to congeal. So at the end of the day, no, it wasn't ignored. So it wasn't a cover-up. It wasn't ignored. It was just that the information was dormant. It just was dormant. That's the best way I can put it.
And how do you guys know about that information? It was leaked. RJ didn't put that out there. Russell Poole didn't put that out there. It was leaked from the LAPD, and you have to think of it this way. Why do people leak documents? They leak documents to either discredit somebody or help somebody. And to get ahead of it. It's called getting ahead of it. They want to put a spin on it ahead of time so that we don't break it for what it is, and that way they can push a false narrative also on you first. That was the whole thing with the murder weapon. It was the same way. They want to drop a false narrative down on you that there actually was a Tupac murder weapon. There never was. But that's what they did, put the information out first. Jesse, you are 1,000% correct, my friend. 1,000%. So, hey, check this out. JC, welcome to the show. RJ, why is so much speculation saying that the letter is fake and not real? Well, it's because they don't want to believe that it is. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, you can look at the sky up above. There are people who say that the Earth is flat. They can say the moon's an illusion. They can say that we never went to the moon. There's a lot of things. The moon's made out of green cheese. The people believe that. There's a lot of trolling going on to that effect right now. Part of that is because of the exposure that the A&E show gave it and their gross misrepresentation of what the letter was about. I mean, it kind of set us back a bit because we're dealing with a new wave of people that didn't know anything about it, and the first thing they hear about the letter is that it's quote unquote flimsy, et cetera, et cetera. So the letter, the letter's not fake. The letter is a real letter. We have the letter. It was really written, and we know who wrote the letter, and it wasn't the guy in prison that wrote the letter. He had nothing to do with it. He delivered the letter. That's all he did. Well, and his sister wrote it. Let's clear that up, because the biggest troll that I'm getting as I read the comments, and I read them, is that it's a prison confession letter. It's not a prison confession letter. Just because the guy who was involved with it, not the guy who wrote it, was involved with the letter, is in prison, makes no bearing on this. This letter did not come from a prisoner. It came
Yeah, the guy
from
went to prison
people
in
on
like
the
2005. This is a 1998 letter. You know, the guy wasn't in prison when the letter was written. The letter was written in 1998. Okay, it was written by a girl, the sister of the guy who eventually went to prison, like a lot of people in the death row story do. They go to prison. So, and by the way, since when is going to prison in this culture, death row culture, make you uncredible? Because by that token, then Tupac shouldn't be credible. He was in prison. So maybe he shouldn't be credible either. I mean, you know, because Tupac wrote something from prison doesn't mean it's credible. I mean, use your own logic. That's how stupid it is when you really get down to the bottom of it. So, Deidre Tatum, welcome to the show. Real quick, did Frank Alexander have a copy of Pac's cease and desist letter, death row, firing David Kenner and requesting an audit? Yes, he did. In fact, he even had a copy of a letter firing Right Way Security at the same time that he fired David Kenner. We just have never published that letter. So yeah, that's how I got it. It was from Frank. So yes, he had a copy of that. Vansor said, Jmix and RJ, the confession letter was a dangerous gamble. No, the Pattons ratted on Little Half Dead and implicated themselves in hopes to get money because they owed a debt to Freeway Ricky Ross. Why did they back off? Jesse?
What was the question? Why didn't who back off?
Well, he said the confession letter was a dangerous gamble. No. Yeah, it was actually a pretty dangerous gamble. I mean, you know, this was the thing. Now, this is why Saria's sister was involved with it, because it was a gamble, but they were hedging their bets. That's how come they knew how serious it was, because they didn't want to have it in their own handwriting where it could be tied back to them if they decided to change their minds or if they got threatened or pressured. They wanted the information out there. They had Saria's sister do it. They were going to do it and give it to Fox News because Fox News is paying money, and they wanted to put it out there and do that. Blatchford was originally going to interview them with that black silhouette screen and change their voice and do all that, like the kind of like the A&E show did with our hooded friend who couldn't make an appearance tonight. He sent his regrets. But at the end of the day, they were going to do that kind of an interview, and when it didn't work out, they went and wrote that letter. But again, they wrote the letter and wanted to get the news information out there and still get paid for the information. They were hoping the letter would kind of suffice in lieu of. But even then, they were hedging their bets.
Well, I think the letter was a gamble to put in the movie. After it was leaked by the LAPD, I mean, and me and RJ talked about this in private, after it was leaked by the LAPD and slandered as the half-dead theory, and I've said this a million times, it's the Patton theory. It's a theory based on the Pattons and Reggie Wright and Sharifa Knight. It's not the half-dead theory. But it was painted that way, and me and RJ had conversations in private about whether to include it. You know, I think that there's enough evidence just the way it sits against Reggie Wright Jr. that you don't have to include it. But the thing about the letter, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, is you can't disprove it. I've tried, and I fought a couple different points on it, but every interview I had and every breadcrumb trail I went down led right back to the letter and it being verified.
Yeah, I mean, and yes, it was a risk to the Pattons. But what's your alternative? You're gonna try to get money. However, you're gonna try to get money. If that's all you have to sell is information, that's what you do. Ask any confidential, reliable informant on the police department. Half these snitches do what they do because they got to feed their kids, they got to pay their rent, they got to do what they got to do. It's not glorious, and they probably don't like doing it, and there's risk to it. But that's what they do to try to earn a couple of bucks, and that's what the promise of Fox. I'm not saying Fox was telling them they were going to pay them, but that's generally what happened. People expected that the news would pay a lot of money to break a story about the murder of Tupac before. I think when Chris Blatchford didn't follow up with it ultimately because they bailed on their interview, and Coach Blatchford said, "F you and the horse you rode in on." I think that at that point, the Pattons, they just kind of walked away from it, and that was the whole value of the age.
They got spooked. They tried to do a gun exchange or drop a gun off, and they got spooked. So people got to keep in mind, yes, it was a bold risk, but they didn't fully take it. They initiated it, but they didn't follow through, and that says something also.
Bansford said, RJ, there's a precedent for Pac stealing concepts, and Little Half Dead may be partly right. Warren G claimed that Pac took his story about fallen friend and integrated it. How long will they mourn me? Combat Jack. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, it's like, it's like making allegations against the church these days. It definitely is not one of those things where um, you want to be saying that Tupac did this or Tupac did that. And I think it's, as far as Brenda's Got a Baby goes, I mean, George Harrison of the Beatles said, I mean, you can't get in anybody's mind to know what they're thinking. But the fact that he scribbled down the lyrics and that they mix the thing there, they mix the tunes there were enough people around seeing him actually create the work that if there was something, anything behind it, or if it was stolen, it would have been something that was an idea that was his head or something that made him think about it. Again, I'm not saying that he did. I think, in fact, there's enough people that could say that he really did not steal that. But again, it goes back to the fact that, if Lil Half Dead believed him, believed that he had done it, or believed that he'd ripped something off of his, now or 15 years ago, then that's his opinion. That's what he told people. And he could also have been, it's like stolen valor. He was, trying to take claim for something he didn't do.
And
So,
we see
I mean,
this, and
true.
we see this, like, okay, for those out there in the audience right now, who here thinks that Tupac stole the idea of Dear Mama from Kill Kill? Does anybody honestly believe that? Well, I tell you what, you know who does believe that? Kill Kill.
Kill.
And
Yeah, he
he's
believes
made
it.
a name off of that.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's to make up for his stupid rap name. But, but I would say that, and of course, I'm not going to mess around with the rapper by the name of Kill Kill anyway. But, I just think that again, any one of those scenarios could be possible. Did he rip it off? I don't think so. I've been wrong about things before. Did Little Half Dead think he ripped him off? I don't know. I'm not in Little Half Dead's name. Did Little Half Dead just claim that it was stolen valor? We have witnesses that Tupac said, witnesses that Little Half Dead told them that he wrote it. Okay, so I don't really sit there and say, if listen, and if people are going to run around saying that Orlando Anderson's guilt is predicated on street people saying that he did it and everybody knowing that he did it, well, then Tupac did steal Little Half Dead's song, according to Little Half Dead, because we have several people that Little Half Dead told that to, or told us that Little Half Dead told us to. So the streets are saying the same thing. Okay, so it doesn't really matter. It's what you can prove, and that's where that. So, but yeah, you're right. There is a precedent for that. Okay, and Valentine Outlaw, his lyrics don't take to Brenda's Got a Baby type of song, and he's not lyrical at all. A lot of people have made that comment. Tupac couldn't have never stolen Lil Half Dead song because Lil Half Dead's not that talented. Okay, that's probably true. Would you not agree, Jesse?
Of course,
I tried
agree.
to
I
I tried to sit through a Little Half Dead album, and I'm like, where the planet did this guy come from? But I'm not a big rap critic, so you know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I've always said about the Half Dead thing is it doesn't matter whether Tupac stole it or not because nobody thinks that he did. All that matters is did Half Dead think that, and did he
Well,
have?
we got to get to this whole thing about Little Half Dead. Third says Little Half Dead wasn't even around during Brenda's Got a Baby. We have pictures to the contrary.
There's video of Half Dead around a lot sooner than what he said on A&E. Lil Half Dead said on A&E that he didn't meet Tupac until Tupac came to Death Row, and denied being around Tupac. But J.M. Kazi's channel has video of Half Dead and Tupac sharing the stage in 1993. So that on its own was at face value was a lie. Half Dead has already lied about his relationship with Tupac.
And so I mean, again, you and I, Jmix, you and I just can't sit here and say he was or he wasn't. I don't think anybody else can say he was or wasn't because they weren't there. We can certainly put out the allegation.
Hey all, it's Jmix here, and I want to thank everybody that took the time to watch the video. If you liked it, go ahead and throw it a like, maybe even a comment down below. And if you really like my content, check out my Patreon. The link is down below. For $1 a month, you get all the live streams, unedited as soon as they happen. Plus, interviews in advance, and other bonus content. The link is in the description. If not, you guys could always watch one of the videos to the side of me. See you on the next upload. One love, everybody.